Thank you very much, Senator Eggleston. Senator KROGER.
Thanks, Mr Acting Deputy President. And I too rise to make some brief observations on the National Disability Insurance Scheme Bill 2013. And I note that in the Shadow Minister, Senator Mitch Fifield's second reading speech, he outlined in essence the two principal purposes of this bill. So I'm actually not going to speak to the construct of the bill, but I would like to take the opportunity to recognise and acknowledge the significance of the difference that the implementation of this legislation will make to the lives of so many people. The bill does have bipartisan support across this chamber, and I'm delighted to see that because of the huge impact it will ultimately have on families who deal with disabilities, individuals who deal with disabilities, and the opportunities that it will provide them, the choice that it will provide them, and the way that it in effect will change individuals' lives. When you look at the facts, it really is quite compelling when you see that some 400,000 people live with disabilities in Australia, and that is a number that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, is on the rise. But some 400,000 individuals suffer from disabilities, so that is, in essence, more than 400,000 families that have to deal with the impact of disabilities and the way in which they have to provide for that. The current system, I have to say, it is regrettable that it's taken this time for us to actually come up with a framework for a national disability insurance scheme, a framework, as I said, that we've all supported. It was something that the Productivity Commission looked into in the late, I think it was 2009 or around then, later then, and it's upon the advice of that Productivity Commission that there has been enormous amount of work that's gone into the determination of the structure, the framework and planning as to how this should apply. And there has been a very, very good and effective consultative process to come to where we are today. And the reason why that is so heartening is because there is no quick fix to this issue. It is not it's not a situation where one model will fit all. It is one that is able to be tailored to the needs of the individual, and it is one that ultimately will, I hope, support not only the physical challenges that those that are affected by disabilities face, but it will provide critical psychological and emotional support for families and their friends in terms of their lifelong challenge that they face and live with, as we know. Most of us, Mr Acting Deputy President, know someone with a disability, or we know we have friends or we have families that have members of that family that have disabilities. So we know firsthand what is required for those families to cope through a lifetime. And I know that in the Senate over the last 12 months, we seem to have had a huge population growth, Mr Acting Deputy President, with either senators having the joy of a new baby entering their lives or grandparents. And we know particularly through the last 12 months here on the coalition side, that there is one heartfelt wish of those parents and grandparents, and that is that their newborns will be born with essentially 10 fingers and 10 toes and healthy, that is their one wish, that those children are healthy. And as we know, that is not always the case. And so it is a real issue for those that have to deal with beautiful children who are born with disabilities or may develop them later on in life. I'll come to it in a moment, but I have had the good fortune since I was elected as a senator. One of the things that has presented to me as an opportunity, which I don't know that I would have had if I had not been elected to the Senate, was to actually visit a number of places that either are early intervention centres, employment workplaces for those with disabilities, or others that provide varying ranges of support services for families. And the one thing that strikes you when you attend all of these facilities is the extraordinary love and the honesty and goodwill that those with disabilities automatically share and present to all who they meet. You know, they just have such a wonderful temperament, so many of them. And I have to say that sometimes I think that we perhaps could take a leaf out of the book in the way in which we deal with each other in this place sometimes, because the goodwill, the degree of goodwill that is shared when you visit so many of these places is so apparent. And the one thing that strikes me as much as anything is this wonderful sense of humour so many have, and they are very quick to take the mickey out of you. And I've got to say, as a politician, I think that is very, very, it's a very good thing to rock up somewhere and have a young child or even an adult take the mickey out of you as you're visiting a particular place. They just, in the main, just have such wonderful senses of humour, and it's something, as I said, that as a senator, I don't know that I would have had the opportunity to meet so many and attend so many places as I have. In my patron seats, there are a large number of support services, and a couple of those that I want to come to in making my short observations. But I just would firstly like to acknowledge, because I do know a number of families whose lives changed for their lifetime and for their children's lifetime when they had children with disabilities. What happens is that they become full-time carers have become full-time carers for individuals from the moment those children were born through to the life of the parents. And depending on the degree of the disability, the extent to which that 24/7 care has been necessary. And I am reminded of someone very close to me whose observation to me not so long ago, whose daughter, who is, has dramatic challenges and needs 24/7 care, when she turned 18, the level of services that they could no longer access and their economic capacity to raise an income in that household was dramatically reduced by the amount of care that they had to provide. And so it was a bit of a vicious cycle, and their number one overarching concern was what was going to happen to their daughter when they weren't able to, whether it was because they physically couldn't or they financially couldn't, but what was going to happen to their daughter once they could no longer provide the care that they have. And we've seen many instances where very ageing parents have expressed their concern about what was going to happen, and they've actually had to put their children, adult children, into aged care facilities because there were no services, there was no residential care available for them to put their disabled adult sibling, child, in adult daughter or son, I should say, into an appropriate residential facility. And so they've actually, you have circumstances where a young 20-year-old has had to be put into an aged care facility, which is which is a great tragedy. I just would like to come to a couple of places that I have visited which that do a tremendous job, and I know that this bill will actually reinforce the support that the families are able to provide for their children. But I just would like to come to a couple of them. The first is a specialist early childhood centre that I visited in Bayswater, which is in the electorate of Deakin in Victoria. And it is an early childhood intervention service that's called Erabina. And I had the great fortune of going there a few months ago because an extraordinary generous Victorian who is the managing director of Clark Rubber by the name of Chris Malcolm, an incredibly philanthropic and generous individual, made a donation with the Liberal Party to Erabina to support some services that they were providing there, and actually provide a lot of product, thousands of dollars worth of goods that would assist the early intervention for those children. And this service, Erabina, is a family-centred. It has programs that are family-centred, preschool age. It is a program that is targeted to early intervention for children that have been diagnosed or suspected to have autism spectrum disorder. And I actually joined in. I actually didn't hop in the pool, but I joined in with activities that they had in a swimming pool there, and saw firsthand how the early intervention with children that are diagnosed early in their lifetime with autism spectrum spectrum disorder, how that early intervention actually can break a cycle and assist them in developing the skills and developing learning capacity so that they can then enter a mainstream school, and in many cases have the opportunity to do that, not only to enter a mainstream school, but to actually go on and be able to reach their personal and true potential. And that is a life-changing, in many cases for these families, this is a life-changing thing that is providing a early intervention for them. One of the mothers that I spoke to, though, was saying how with this particular scheme there is support provided, but if intensive therapy is required, then it doesn't cover that. And this legislation actually, because it is tailored towards the individual, actually will, which is one of the elements that I strongly applaud, it is tailored towards the individual, so will provide individual financial support as is needed. Another facility that I visited with the leader, Tony Abbott, of the Coalition in Nunawading, is a workplace, and actually with the Shadow Minister, Senator Mitch Fifield as well, in Nunawading is a great place, and I think that Senator Fifield has been there on a number of occasions, and it's a place called Nadreska, which was established in 1967. And its purpose, when it was established, was to develop a range of services for people with a disability. The organisation has developed and evolved over time, but it provides currently a range of services and employment for over 350 people with a disability, and employs approximately 150 permanent, part-time and casual staff across all their services to assist their clients. The services that they support and provide include, and this is not a comprehensive account, but includes a disability-supported employment service, It has a service that provides day programs and activities for persons with significant disabilities. It provides accommodation services, which includes 24-hour care and independent living, as well as recreational and holiday programs, all which once again are tailored to the needs of individual families. Nebraska industry is a critical and essential part of the organisational structure in terms of support for disability services, because it does provide employment and vocational training opportunities for people with a disability, and it generates revenue in addition to government funding. So it generates revenue which is put back into the system to provide greater support. And I just, in recollecting our most recent visit there, it really was a great example of how, when you meet people that, one, support those with disabilities, but secondly, the diversity of those that might be intellectually or physically disabled, it really does ground you, I have to say, because it was very hard, and it was great to see, essentially, the leader of the coalition, Tony Abbott, in a headlock, if you like, by those who were working on the factory floor, because they didn't want him to leave. And I don't know that I got the same response. I don't know about you, Senator Fifield, but they actually had the leader in a headlock at one stage. So our program of visits, which were scheduled for us to be there for about an hour or so, was actually rolled out to probably double that. I don't know quite how long we were there in the end, because they did not want us to leave, because they loved the engagement. They loved the opportunity to be able to offer and be involved in meaningful activities. And I think this is what is so critical. So I just would like to firstly acknowledge the importance of early intervention and therapy, because one-on-one sessions can identify learning issues, and I'm sure we all know of a lot of examples where that early intervention and diagnosis and early intervention has enabled individuals to go on into mainstream activities, and I say mainstream for want of a better word, but mainstream schools and our workplaces, which I think has to be the #1 goal for us to support people to do that. But it does that through improving physical competency and may even slow or minimise the progression of a particular disability. In essence, what I think this legislation provides ultimately is a greater choice for families, because what it does do is gives people an opportunity to gives a greater raft of opportunities for families and various courses that they can take, so that they can provide greater support and so that we can provide greater support for them. But I think the #1 fundamental thing is to appreciate and recognise and give those with disabilities the opportunity themselves to be involved in what we who don't have disabilities would and I don't say this and mean to do it in a patronising way, but may be able to make an active contribution to society. They do now. This provides a greater opportunity for them to do that even more. I strongly support this, and I would like to, in closing, recognise, acknowledge all those unsung Australian heroes who basically have held the disability sector together and have supported what is an enormous, important area and task. And I'd like to pay my deepest Respect to them, Mr Acting Deputy President.